Hi, today we're going to talk about how to fill out the agency disclosure. So the agency disclosure tells anyone who reads it who represents who in a specific transaction. The buyer's agent is responsible for filling out the agency disclosure and including it in the offer over to the seller. So you're going to put the property address on the property address line where it says buyer's name. You're going to put the name of your buyer or buyers if you have more than one. And where it says seller's name, you're going to put the name of the seller. So you can find the seller's name on the residential property disclosure and also verify it with the county auditor's website. If the county auditor has a different person's name on it, defer to the residential property disclosure. Next, you're going to figure out which section applies for your transaction. So if you have a transaction involving two agents and two different brokerages, so Century 21 Homestar represents the buyer and Howard Hanna represents the seller, then you're going to be filling out transaction involving two agents and two different brokerages, section number 1. Section number 2 and number 3 would be blank, and the buyers would all sign and date down at the bottom. And then of course it's going in the offer for the sellers to sign and date. If you have a transaction that involves two Century 21 Homestar agents, so same brokerage as Homestar, you then fill out section number 2 and section number 1 would be left blank. So you would fill out who you represent the buyer. So you'd fill out the buyer's line. And for instance, Mike Ferrante might represent the seller. So you'd fill that one out. The second part of section number 2, where it says every agent in the brokerage represents every client, we don't follow that. That would mean that you, as a Century 21 Homestar agent, would represent every single client that all 500 agents have. So that is not something that we do. Okay. If you happen to be the only agent involved in the transaction, you're going to ignore 1, ignore 2, and only put information in section number 3. So your name and Century 21 Homestar would go on the top, and then you'd either be filling out checking the box for whether you are a dual agent or if you're only representing one client. So for instance, if it's a for sale by owner, the seller doesn't want representation. So you would be check marking the second one, and you would be representing the buyer. If you happen to be representing the seller and the buyer is unrepresented, then you would also be checking the second box. Dual agency is very, very precarious for agents to do because you're now breaking your trust of the seller, saying, oh, you're going to be on your own, and you have to make your own decisions. You also have to be very careful when you are the only agent involved in the transaction that you are not telling the other party something that they're not supposed to know, because you will now know everything about everyone. So just be very, very careful about that. Homestar agents definitely contact me or even Julia or Tony if you have questions about whether you should be a dual agent or not, because we definitely have some advice to give you as far as that goes. There are 2 pages to the agency disclosure. You're always going to include the second page, which talks about dual agency, even if you are not doing dual agency in your transaction, because it also talks about management level licensees and brokers possibly getting involved in the transaction, and definitely that we know or have access to everything about it. So that is your lesson about agency disclosure. If anybody has any questions, of course, always give us a call and we'll talk to you soon.